When the crying woman got into my taxi that Tuesday morning, I could tell she was going through something terrible. As a taxi driver struggling to support my newborn son and wife Maria, every fare counted toward our bills and groceries. But when Diana told me about losing her father to cancer and how he'd promised to see his grandchildren grow up, I couldn't bring myself to charge her for the ride. You won't believe what happened next. I never expected that 3 days later, Diana would call me with a delivery that would change my family's life forever. Sometimes when you choose kindness over profit, the universe finds a way to reward your compassion in ways you never imagined possible. Hi everyone, welcome to Life's Changing Stories. Now let's dive into today's story. The cramped one-bedroom apartment that Carlos Rivera shared with his wife Maria and their 2-month-old son Diego felt smaller every day as they navigated the challenges of new parenthood while struggling to make ends meet on the irregular income that came from driving taxi in downtown Phoenix. At 27, Carlos had discovered that his childhood passion for cars and driving could provide a modest living, but the financial reality of supporting a family on taxi driver wages was far more difficult than he had anticipated when he left his previous job washing dishes at a busy restaurant to pursue work that felt more meaningful and aligned with his interests. Maria had been forced to put her small online jewelry business on hold after Diego's birth, as the demands of caring for a newborn left her with no time or energy for the marketing, customer service, and shipping responsibilities that had been generating a few $100s per month in supplemental income for their household. Her recovery from childbirth had been more difficult than expected, requiring additional rest and medical attention that further limited her ability to contribute financially, while Carlos worked 12-hour shifts 6 days a week to cover their basic expenses. Carlos found strength and motivation in watching Diego sleep peacefully in the second-hand crib they had assembled in the corner of their bedroom, reminding himself that every fare, every tip, and every long day behind the wheel was an investment in his son's future and his family's stability. The financial pressure was relentless, but Carlos took pride in being able to provide for his wife and child through honest work that allowed him to be his own boss and build relationships with the diverse collection of passengers who needed transportation throughout the city. The taxi Carlos drove was a 15-year-old Crown Victoria that he leased from a local fleet company, paying weekly fees that consumed a significant portion of his earnings but provided him with the vehicle, insurance, and licensing necessary to operate legally in Phoenix's competitive taxi market. The car showed its age in various ways: worn upholstery, occasional mechanical issues, and a radio system that required periodic adjustment. But it was reliable enough to keep him working and earning the money his family needed for rent, groceries, and the mounting collection of baby supplies that seemed to require constant replenishment. This particular Tuesday morning had started like most others, with Carlos leaving the apartment before dawn to begin his shift during the busy period when commuters, airport travelers, and early morning business passengers needed reliable transportation to start their day. He had already completed several short trips around the downtown area when he spotted a woman flagging him down outside the Phoenix Art Museum, her body language suggesting urgency and distress that immediately caught his attention. Carlos Rivera adjusted his rearview mirror and checked his fuel gauge as he navigated through downtown Phoenix traffic, beginning what he hoped would be a profitable Tuesday that would help him cover the grocery bill and make progress toward paying down the credit card debt that had accumulated during Maria's difficult pregnancy and Diego's first few weeks of life. At 27, Carlos had been driving taxi for 8 months, having left his previous job washing dishes at Romano's Italian restaurant to pursue work that utilized his extensive knowledge of automobiles and his natural ability to navigate the city's complex network of streets and highways. Carlos had fallen in love with cars during childhood, spending hours reading automotive magazines and dreaming about owning the sports cars and luxury vehicles that represented success and freedom in his teenage imagination. While driving taxi was far from glamorous, it allowed him to work with vehicles daily and provided the flexibility he needed to adjust his schedule around Maria's recovery and Diego's needs as a newborn, requiring constant attention and care. The financial pressure of supporting a family on taxi driver income had been more challenging than Carlos anticipated, particularly during Maria's maternity leave when their household income was reduced to whatever he could earn during long shifts that often stretched from early morning until late evening. Maria's online jewelry business had been generating modest supplemental income before Diego's birth, but caring for a newborn had made it impossible for her to maintain the consistent marketing and customer service that online sales required. As Carlos was driving south on Central Avenue, he noticed a well-dressed woman in her 30s standing on the sidewalk outside the Phoenix Art Museum, waving her hand to hail his taxi with obvious urgency. Carlos pulled over immediately, and the woman climbed into the back seat without making eye contact or offering the usual greeting that most passengers provided when beginning their ride. Initially, Carlos didn't notice that his passenger was crying, as he was focused on entering the destination into his GPS system and navigating back into traffic safely. However, after a few minutes of driving, he became aware of soft, sniffling sounds coming from the back seat that gradually became more pronounced and difficult to ignore. "Is everything okay back there?" Carlos asked gently, glancing at his passenger in the rearview mirror with genuine concern for her obvious distress. "I'm fine," the woman replied curtly, her voice strained with emotion. "Just take me to Maple Street, please." Carlos respected her desire for privacy and continued driving, but as the sniffling sounds became louder and more frequent, he felt compelled to offer assistance, or at least acknowledge her distress, in a way that might provide some comfort during what was clearly a difficult moment. "I'm sorry if I'm overstepping," Carlos said carefully, "but you seem really upset about something. I'm a good listener if you want to talk about whatever's bothering you. Sometimes it helps to share what's on your mind with someone who doesn't know you." The woman was quiet for several moments before responding, and when she finally spoke, her voice reflected a combination of gratitude and embarrassment about her earlier rudeness. "I'm sorry for being mean to you," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "I just lost my father, and I'm not handling it very well right now." Carlos immediately felt his heart go out to his passenger, understanding the devastating pain of losing a parent from his own experience when his father had died in a construction accident 7 years earlier. The grief and sense of loss had been overwhelming, and Carlos remembered how important it had been to have people who were willing to listen and offer support during the most difficult period of his life. "I'm so sorry for your loss," Carlos said sincerely, adjusting his driving to take a slightly longer route that would give his passenger more time to express her feelings without feeling rushed or pressured to compose herself before reaching her destination. The woman began sharing her story, explaining that her father had been battling cancer for 2 years and had promised to fight the disease so he could walk her down the aisle at her upcoming wedding and eventually meet his grandchildren when she started a family of her own. "He was my rock and my best friend," she continued, tears flowing freely as she spoke about the man who had raised her alone after her mother abandoned them when she was just 8 years old. "He promised me he would beat this cancer and be there for all the important moments in my life. He said he was going to fight with everything he had, but now he's gone, and I feel so betrayed and lost." Carlos listened without interrupting, understanding that sometimes the most helpful thing he could do was simply provide a safe space for someone to express their grief and process the overwhelming emotions that come with losing a beloved family member. He thought about Diego sleeping peacefully at home and tried to imagine how devastating it would be for his son to lose his father at such a young age, or how he would feel if something happened to prevent him from being present for the important milestones in Diego's life. "My father died when I was 20, Carlos shared quietly, and I still think about all the things I wish I could share with him, especially now that I have a son of my own. I know how much it hurts to lose someone who meant everything to you." After approximately 10 minutes of driving and conversation, Carlos arrived at Maple Street and pulled over in front of a modest house with a well-maintained garden that suggested someone who had taken pride in their home and neighborhood. However, instead of immediately asking his passenger to pay for the ride, Carlos waited quietly while she continued processing her emotions and sharing memories about her father's kindness, strength, and the dreams they had shared for her future. "I'm sorry for keeping you here," the woman said as she realized they had arrived at her destination. "I know you probably have other passengers waiting, and I should pay you for the extra time you've given me." Carlos turned around to face his passenger directly, offering her a genuine smile that reflected his natural compassion and his understanding of what it meant to struggle with circumstances beyond one's control. "This ride is on me," Carlos said firmly, refusing to accept any payment despite knowing that every dollar mattered for his family's financial stability. "You've had a terrible day, and a little kindness wouldn't hurt. I hope things get easier for you." The woman stared at Carlos in amazement, clearly surprised by his generosity and touched by his willingness to sacrifice income to show compassion to someone he had never met before and would probably never see again. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude as she gathered her purse and prepared to leave the taxi. "Your kindness means more to me than you could possibly understand." Carlos offered his condolences one final time as his passenger exited the vehicle, and he watched her walk slowly toward her house, carrying herself with the heavy gait of someone processing profound grief and loss. He felt a deep sense of sympathy for her situation and hoped that time would eventually heal the pain she was experiencing, though he understood from personal experience that losing a parent creates a void that never completely disappears. Due to the volume of passengers he needed to serve during his remaining hours of work, Carlos soon moved on to other fares and gradually forgot about the crying woman, never even mentioning the encounter to Maria when he returned home that evening, exhausted from another long day of driving through Phoenix traffic and dealing with the various challenges that came with working in the service industry. 3 days later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, when Carlos was enjoying a rare day off at home with Maria and Diego, his cell phone rang with a call from an unknown local number. Carlos almost didn't answer, assuming it was probably a telemarketer or someone trying to sell him services he couldn't afford. But something prompted him to pick up the call and see who was trying to reach him. "Hello, is this Carlos Rivera, the taxi driver?" asked a woman's voice that sounded vaguely familiar, but that Carlos couldn't immediately identify. "Yes, this is Carlos," he replied, trying to place the voice while wondering how someone had obtained his personal phone number. "This is Diana Blackwell," the woman explained. "You picked me up on Tuesday morning when I was crying about losing my father. You gave me a free ride to Maple Street." Carlos immediately remembered the grieving woman and felt concerned that she might be calling to report a problem or complaint about their interaction, though he couldn't imagine what issue could have arisen from their brief encounter. "Your kindness that day really stuck with me," Diana continued, her voice carrying a warmth that hadn't been present during their original meeting. "I've been thinking about how generous you were to someone who was a complete stranger, and I've decided to show you some kindness in return. Carlos felt puzzled by Diana's statement, wondering what she could possibly mean by showing him kindness, and how she had managed to track down his personal contact information. "I have someone on their way to deliver a gift to you right now," Diana said. "It should arrive at your apartment within the next few minutes." "How do you know where I live?" Carlos asked, feeling increasingly confused about how Diana had obtained such personal information about his address and phone number. "I have my ways," Diana replied mysteriously, avoiding his question while maintaining the cheerful tone that suggested she was planning something positive rather than threatening. "I just wanted to call and thank you again for your kindness. You'll understand everything soon." Before Carlos could ask any additional questions, Diana ended the call, leaving him staring at his phone and wondering what kind of gift could possibly be coming to his apartment from someone he had met for less than 15 minutes 3 days earlier. Almost immediately after Diana hung up, Carlos heard a firm knock on his front door that caused Diego to stir in his crib and prompted Maria to look up from the magazine she had been reading on the couch. "Are you expecting someone?" Maria asked, as Carlos walked toward the door with curiosity and slight apprehension about who might be visiting them on a Sunday afternoon. When Carlos opened the door, he found a man in his 40s wearing a professional navy blue suit and carrying a large manila envelope that appeared to contain something substantial and important. "Mr. Carlos Rivera?" the man asked politely, consulting a piece of paper to confirm the name and address. "That's me," Carlos replied, accepting the envelope that was clearly marked with his name and address in elegant handwriting. "This is from Miss Diana Blackwell," the man explained. "She asked me to deliver this to you personally and ensure that you received it safely." After the delivery man left, Carlos returned to the living room where Maria was waiting with obvious curiosity about the unexpected package and its mysterious sender. Carlos carefully opened the manila envelope, and both he and Maria gasped simultaneously when they saw the contents: multiple bundles of cash arranged neatly inside, representing more money than Carlos typically earned in several months of driving taxi. Carlos immediately called Diana back, his hands shaking as he dialed her number and tried to process what had just happened to his family's financial situation. "Diana, I think you sent me the wrong package," Carlos said as soon as she answered the phone. "There's a lot of money in this envelope, and I'm sure it's meant for someone else." Diana chuckled warmly, clearly amused by Carlos's assumption that such a significant gift could have been delivered by mistake. "Everything in that envelope belongs to you," Diana said firmly. "It's my way of saying thank you for showing kindness to a stranger who needed it more than you could have known at the time." Carlos felt tears welling up in his eyes as he realized that Diana's gift was genuine and intended specifically for him and his family, representing a level of generosity that exceeded anything he had ever experienced or imagined possible. "I don't know how to thank you," Carlos said, his voice breaking with emotion as he thought about the bills he could pay, the groceries he could buy, and the security he could provide for Diego and Maria. "How can I ever repay you for this?" "You don't need to repay me," Diana replied gently. "Just do whatever you want with your gift. People like you are really rare to find in this world, and your kindness gave me hope during one of the darkest moments of my life." After Diana ended the call, Carlos broke down in tears of relief and gratitude, knowing that his family's life was about to change dramatically for the better. The money Diana had given him was enough to pay off their credit card debt, cover their living expenses for several months, and provide the foundation for building the kind of financial stability that had seemed impossible just hours earlier. Carlos used Diana's gift to make smart financial decisions that improved their quality of life while ensuring long-term security for his family. He was able to purchase a reliable used car that he could use for taxi work without paying weekly lease fees, allowing him to keep more of his earnings while providing better service to his passengers. He also helped Maria restart her jewelry business by investing in better equipment and marketing, creating an additional income stream that would reduce their dependence on his taxi driving. Most importantly, Carlos learned that the good you put into the world comes back in ways you could never predict, and that small acts of kindness can matter more than you realize to people who are going through difficult times. His decision to provide a free ride to a grieving stranger had been motivated by simple human compassion rather than any expectation of reward. But Diana's overwhelming generosity had demonstrated that choosing kindness over profit can create miracles that transform entire families' futures. Carlos's story became a reminder that being the kind of person who makes the world a little easier for someone else, one ride at a time, can create ripple effects of goodness that extend far beyond the original act of compassion. His willingness to sacrifice a day's income to comfort a stranger in pain had not only provided Diana with hope during her darkest hour, but had also created the opportunity for his own family to experience unexpected blessings that would change their lives forever. We hope you enjoyed today's story of love, life, and betrayal. For more free stories and entertainment from our channel, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe with notifications.